I just watched Rocky 1 and I want to chat about it. Welcome to Magic in the Ordinary, where we talk about incredible things in everyday life. I've been talking a lot about movies lately, and I've been giving some hate, so I think it's time to give some love. And I'm going to talk about Rocky 1, which is such a lovely classic. I watched it kind of in preparation for I Play Rocky, which is coming out this fall. And I just want to talk about three questions that I think Rocky asks us, not in a preachy way, but just like a really good, hey, what are we doing in life kind of way. And for those of you who don't know, Rocky is the story of a very underdog boxer who might just get a shot to compete with a really high level, like on a high level fight card. So it's the story very much of an underdog trying to make his way up through the world. And towards the beginning of the movie, Adrian, the kind of the love interest, she asks him, why do you do it? Why do you fight? And he answers, because I can't sing or dance, in his very typical accent. And it's funny, right? He's saying, okay, I'm not a performer in other ways, and I got to put food on the table somehow, and this is my livelihood. So the lines can be kind of funny, but she keeps asking it, and there's this sense that the question goes a little bit deeper than just like, why do you get in the ring? But like, what is the point of this? And kind of what is the point of life? Like, what are we fighting for? What's going on here? Adrian wants to know, like, why do you fight in the ring? And this is really hard for her to wrap her mind around because she's not a violent person. And there's something a little bit deeper going on in Rocky's character, of course. There's something about himself that he wants to prove. And I think that this question, why do you fight? It applies to our own lives, even if we're not boxers, because there's this sense of what are we fighting for? Life can just kind of happen really easily, but like Adrian's question, I think is a great challenge. Like, stop, slow down, look around and say, wait, but why? What are we fighting for? Why do we keep getting in that ring? Because once we know what we're fighting for, I think that we can go a level deeper. We can be a little bit more intentional about it. And I think one of the things that Rocky, why he wants to get in that ring is he wants to see who he is. There's a sense of, his boxing isn't just some career choice for him. It's a way that he's proving himself in a certain sense. And so the movie continues, and I think that the second big question that this movie asks is kind of, who are you in the ring? So cue one of the most epic montages in movie history. I love it. But what we see is Rocky starting to train. He's got a shot. He wants to become a better boxer. And so we see him in his gray tracksuit running, punching the bag, getting hitting meat, running up the steps, of course, and giving his iconic Rocky pose. What we essentially see is what happens when humanity meets suffering, and that suffering transforms that person. What we see is adversity meeting humanity, clashing together, and humanity keeps going. What do we become in the face of adversity? And I think that the ring, of course, is this huge metaphor for life, that, we find out who we are in the face of adversity oftentimes. We don't want bad things to happen, but once they happen, then we have this chance to kind of see who we are in the midst of that. I don't know. I think there's a lot of that kind of idea of who are you in the ring? That question that Rocky kind of seems to hint at, the movie seems to hint at, is a little bit like it reminds me of the Man in the Arena poem, where it's like, don't judge the man in the arena. You can't kind of stand out as a critic. You have to being in the arena is very, very different than just watching things from afar. And I think that the Rocky movie is really cool because it's like asking this question of, who are you in the arena of your own life? I think that was awesome. And then finally, the third question that I thought was really interesting is like, will you take the shot? Rocky is a local fighter, and people are starting there's a lot of situations or circumstances in the movie that lead to a higher name boxer. He's looking for a fight, and he decides he wants to look for a more local fight, potentially giving Rocky this chance. Now, it's interesting. I was watching some interviews with Sylvester Stallone, the writer and the person who plays Rocky, of course, who him talking about like how everyone feels like if they were just given a shot, if they were just given a chance, they would do it. There's a lot of fighters who are like, just let me in that ring, you know, I could do it. There are people who are saying they feel the same way with sports, like just let me on that field for a little bit. I could show you how it's done. I can do it. I've seen writers the same way, like that book's good. I think I could do that too. You know, just give me a shot. Just give me a chance to prove that I can put in that work. I can do that too. And so I think the cool thing about this movie is that it's talking about like what happens if you could be given a chance. Are you willing to fight for that chance? And if you're presented it, you know, would you jump? Would you take it? Would you take the shot? And how would that look once you've taken that shot? Would you take the shot? And I like thinking of it in a bigger context as well. Of like, we're not just talking boxing or not just like even one dream, but like, um, you know, would you take the shot in your career? Would you take the shot in your relationship? Would you take the shot, whatever that it looks like, you know, would you go for it? So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of good questions that Rocky, the character, is going through in the movie that kind of challenges the viewer while providing a very entertaining show. Also challenges the reader to kind of ask those questions in their own life. Why do you fight? Who are you in the ring, and would you take the shot? So anyways, keep fighting, friends, and I'll see you next time.